This is what businesses and leaders tend to get wrong when they're doing this change management thing, when they're trying to get the people, the organization to change, to essentially adapt to a new change. And it's not done successfully. And that's because right at the start, they've only sort of been guided by this big idea that they have, but the big idea was never tested with all the stakeholders, and that's like your internal people, your any person who has a really meaningful, significant perspective and take and sort of view on the organization where you're trying to change. Without getting all of that intel and insight, your change, whatever you're trying to manage, is going to fail. There's this really peculiar thing that leaders do, and actually, it's probably what they're doing out of the workplace, sort of not in their professional life, is that when they need to change something, introduce something new, they won't get everyone's perspectives and ideas. It's because they know they'll get shot down. They know that they'll get dismissed, or people will disagree with the idea and they might want to change it. But because they want their idea to win, they push it through anyway. And then in the end, when it comes to actually implementing the idea and it fails, it's because those people weren't consulted. Because there was such an attachment to the big idea that just getting the big idea out there and introducing it was more important than it even being a success, than it even working. Nowadays, we see more and more organisations, businesses that are trying to get more collaboration, more sort of creativity in the teams, and they tend to ask people to do it using sort of current forms of connectivity, if you like, or sort of current practices like Teams meetings and forced fun and that kind of thing. And the reason why it won't work ever is because there's a really big barrier and a block to why people won't collaborate and be more creative in your team and your organization. And that's because of your culture. And your culture will not change after an away day, after some forced fun, or after a Teams meeting. So you have to work with what you have and stop with the blue sky thinking, because you'll actually alienate people even more. The biggest block to change and innovation is leadership not accepting their limitations and what they're sort of unable to get right, not what they're getting wrong and what they're trying to fix, but actually accepting the limits on their own competence and their own ability. So we've got teams and senior leaders always doing this sort of risk assessment, but what about your sort of assessment of your limitations and where perhaps you're weak? What about you needing to challenge your own assumptions about what you can actually achieve? Otherwise, you just keep having failed attempts at trying to get more innovative team outputs, etc., etc. So there needs to be a reality check at board level, and that needs to trickle all the way. When decision makers take on new initiatives, schemes, ideas, what they're not thinking about, unfortunately, is what happens afterwards. So what are you actually going to get out of taking on this scheme, promoting it, championing it? What is the impact of that idea that you are now championing? What is the impact that it's going to have on your culture and your values as a brand and a business? Because a lot of these ideas and initiatives are very popular and they get lots of clicks. But clicks, perception, optics aside, in terms of operation, the people that you have running your whole thing, how does it matter to them? Leaders are usually in such a rush to be more inclusive that they don't give much thought to the impact of new ideas and how they could potentially exclude. Now you might argue, oh, including something good might harm something negative, right? But that doesn't mean we have to cater to the negative just because it harms them, because we shouldn't have them in the first place. It's a bad idea. But those bad ideas are within your organisation, and they live, reside, bubble away. So if they're not managed, if you're not managing that change, then that bad idea could just get more and more amplified. So ensure that when you're introducing something new, you're looking at who is it going to impact negatively and how can you manage that better. Get clear on it first.